It's very interesting to remember those moments of how did I choose this. Because at first I wanted to be something related with humanistics, like maybe a translator, maybe an anthropologist, or something that was connected with the things that I liked in the school. But then I realized that I liked more the music than anything else.
Welcome to Uncovering Music IDs, a podcast where we explore the personal stories and cultural roots behind the music. I'm Mernouche, and today I'm honored to introduce our guest, Javier Navarro Lara, a Chilean musician whose journey began in Santiago de Chile and has brought him to Finland's Sibelius Academy. Welcome, bienvenido.
Gracias, Mernouche.
We are so happy to have you here with us today. Let's start by going back to your early years in Santiago. What was your childhood like, and how did music find its way into your life?
I have very beautiful memories from my childhood. I feel like privileged to have both of my parents and my brother around me, and a nice amount of friends that were in the neighborhood and in the school. So that was a beautiful environment to grow up. The music for me was brought from my parents because they like to listen to music. My mom, she has always been singing in the church choir. That is, of course, not that professional thing, but she just do it as part of her spirituality, and because of the joy of making music and singing. But I didn't start playing an instrument until I have like 13 years old.
Okay, and what happened?
Yeah, basically towards my childhood and my younger ages, I started liking a lot of rock music, heavy metal, and I kind of fell in love with the sound of the bass, mostly from this artist Steve Harris from Iron Maiden. So I was very touched by his way of doing music, and looking at this rock artist, I was like, oh, okay, I like how is this instrument. So I have the chance to have my own bass, and I start practicing like a self-taught.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So that is the beginning of this
Wow.
long way. And it's not that common that people recognize the bass as by first, because mostly in the rock music there is a lot of electric guitars, and this that's the main character, and the bass player is sometimes it's like aside, and even not in the photos sometimes.
Oh.
But at least in Iron Maiden and these other bands that I really like, the bass has a very important role, and that's what I liked.
Interesting. At some point, did you feel ready to go more seriously with music, actually to study it in
Yeah.
a university or academy?
Yes. When I was in the secondary school, I thought that that music was just a hobby, and that was also the will of my parents at some point. However, when I was like 17 years old, I met my very best friend right now, and also the one that gave me a lot of pain, let's say, that is the double bass, the contrabass in many other language. And that took me to a part of the music that was more serious, let's say, because it's a very demanding instrument. is a very challenging instrument, not only in the playing, it's also in the carrying the instrument or how to take care of that.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was very committed by it, and I really love it. I really wanted to play, and I was having lessons, and I was playing in orchestras, and then I thought that that could be the way that I wanted to develop my life in the future, and yeah, that brought me to start thinking that maybe this is the way that I want to develop as a professional path.
Yeah, and pursue it in an academy. It's really powerful to hear how a passion turns into a real path. It's always very nice to hear that. Thank you.
Yes, I think it's very interesting to remember those moments of how did I choose this. Because at first I wanted to be something related with humanistics, like maybe a translator, maybe anthropologist, or something that was connected with the things that I liked in the school. But then I realized that I liked more the music than anything else, and that brought me here.
Thank you for coming here.
Yeah.
And at some point, you stepped away from both programs that you were studying. What happened?
Yeah. Well, I think it was a difficult decision for me to start working and studying in music. And at that time, when I choose to study music, I choose to study two things at the same time. I was studying the music education that was mostly supported by my parents, because it was like a way to have a stable income in the future. And also I was at the same time studying the conservatory in Chile. I was studying double bass as a main instrument. So I think I for 2 years I was working a lot with both of those studies, and also in the side I was playing to have some own income. So I started working with music mostly when I was 19, and then I was studying these both things. And at some point I realized that music, that I was not playing the things that I like, because at some point the classical music was like a thing that was not connected so much with my own sound, or the way that classical music wanted to develop in my life was not the way that I wanted to play as, or to see myself in the future as a. And also in the part of the music education, I was very disappointed after my first practice about the Chilean system of education, and I felt that was not for me. So at some point, after studying 4 years in both of the things, I just dropped out, and I had also a burnt out because of the many things that I was doing. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of work, a lot of stress.
Of course.
I got sick, so I moved everything aside.
It's understandable.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that decision somehow gave you space to develop more in your own way that you were searching for.
Yeah, at the same time I was in the schools, I was working in music in like restaurant gigs and stuff like that. I was playing in the streets, and I was learning this way of music that is not written, that is not so much teachable in the universities, and is the way of playing by ear, by following somebody, by learning every day how to play music, but also how to work as a band, how to work with others, that only the street playing gave me. Like there was no other school that was like forming my way to play and to develop my musicality as it happens in the streets and doing other activities related with the music. So after I dropped out the schools, I went first to a tour with other friends, like hitchhiking with their instruments. At that time, I didn't hitchhike with my double bass, but I was with an acoustic bass, and with three other friends, we went to the north of Chile, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and that moment in my life was crucial because I think that at that moment I said, okay, I really want to keep doing music. Like there was nothing about the academia, not like it was everything about the way I wanted to play music, and I thought like, well, this is the way I can play music. I can survive like that. Let's keep going. Yeah.
Sounds interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Since you mentioned that you played a lot as a street musician, how did that experience shape your musicianship, your confidence, or even your understanding of what music can be?
Yeah. For me, playing the streets was clearly one of the most important schools that I have had. By that time, I was playing with a quartet that was called Trio Paris. It's hard to understand why, but it's with these musicians that were there. I learned a lot how was the role of my playing in such a quartet, because there was an accordion, a saxophone, and drums, little snare drum that we were performing in the streets for people, and there was no stage there. Like we just drop off in the street, and we were playing for the people who wanted to listen, because that's the magic of the street, is that there's nobody who's paying for listening to you. They're just grateful for being for hearing such as a thing in the streets, and that was magical for me, because at some point you could see that there was a big amount of people just listening there, stopping their life and say, oh, this is nice, and they stay for a while, and they clap, and they want your phone number to bring you to their private parties and things like that. Like, it was a very cool stage. And also in my musicality, it developed like a way that, even though it was tough, because double bass against all these noisy instruments, it has to be played very, very loud, and maybe not with the technique of the classical music, where we mostly use I don't know, the bow and more melodic style. But here it was mostly playing, I don't know, 2 notes for a whole song, and that song you have to resist and play very, very loud enough for people from very far to hear. So that was a challenge. Also, I developed, okay, I can also play. We were playing with my friend, the accordion player, Juan Carlos. We both started playing in the metro, that in Chile was not a thing. But then we started playing the metro, and it was like another beautiful moments that were happening there.
I think experiences like that can teach a lot about people, music, and even yourself. What first brought you to Europe, and how has the experience of migration been for you, both musically and personally?
The first time I came to Europe was in 2018. I was in a tour with a band that's called Golosa La Orquesta. With them, I had two tours in Europe, one in 2018 and one in 2019. For me, it was a mind-blowing experience when I came to Europe. The first time I arrived to Hungary, and it was a music festival that was full of music from all over the world. And then after that, we went to another festival to play. I was the same. People from a lot of places, a lot of musicians all over the world. And then to Italy, same story. Like, I didn't notice that in Europe there was such a diversity of people, that not only the Europeans, that people from all over the world comes to Europe to play music. And that was absolutely a blast for my head and for my musicality, because I started getting into music that I didn't know before, like Arabic music, like Balkan music, and African music, styles that I couldn't recognize in Chile as a soundscape, because sadly Chile, as a country that is so far away and limited by the huge mountains, the Andes, and the biggest sea of the Pacific Ocean, and the desert in the north and the huge winds of the south, is very isolated from the world. So all the music that comes there, or they are part of the landscape that were surrounding Chile, and also the influence of the different colonizers. So being in Europe was a huge privilege for me, and it made me understand that at some point I wanted to live here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Sadly, after that comes the COVID. But in my mindset, after the tour in 2019, I was very committed to come and try once to live in Europe.
Okay, that's a big move.
Yeah.
And I believe that migration can really add many layers into a musician's journey.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a whole journey for me to stabilize myself in Europe. At first, I lived 1 year in Estonia, in a city called Viljandi. That was a huge change for me, because I come from a place that is 6 million people city, that is Santiago, maybe more now, and that city was 20,000. So it was like a huge change, and of course the climate is very difficult to adapt. Like, mostly for me, it's not such a thing about the cold weather. It's mostly about the darkness, that is kind of close to the sensation as in Finland. Like, maybe a couple more minutes of more of sunlight than here, but it was still very tough. But after that, there was the challenge of finding another visa, another possibility to stay maybe in that same country or in another countries. And that was a huge challenge, a huge journey. I can say like an exodus that I had, like in different countries, in Poland, in Germany, in many places that I tried to live and get another permit to live. And it was very hard. Until I got into the school here in Finland, I could stabilize myself.
Okay, sounds
Yeah.
interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. How did you first get involved with international music camps?
In 2019, I got the invitation from one of the violinists of this band, Golosa la Orchestra, and she said, you should try this music camp that is happening in Chile. There is a lot of people from different parts of the world, and you should give it a try.
So you were in Europe, and then she was telling in Chile there is happening.
Yeah,
Okay.
she was like promoting this as an experience for me, and thank you, Danka, for that. and she said that I should first. I went to a ethnokind party, people that were in Santiago. They just gathered and they just played, and it was a very interesting jam. And then I said, okay, I will go to the camp. Let's give it a try. Mm-hmm. And this happens in not so far away from Santiago. It was in Cahuil. And then it was also another mind-blowing experience because I met a lot of musicians from all over the world with different cultural backgrounds and with a lot of their heritage and cultural identities brought into a music. So that was very cool. I thought that kind of camps gave me the sensation that I could play with people from different parts of the world without even knowing so much about their music. But the most interesting part was to learn from them.
I want to ask you, how did they help you connecting with global music communities? And did you first hear about global music program in Finland through them or somewhere else?
Yeah, that same first camp that I attended in 2019 in Chile, I met Vilma Talvitier and Sami Karkar. And they also invited me to the Finnish version of ethno music camp in Kaustinen in Finland. So after that, I came to Finland. I experienced the beautiful camp. Also, it was my first try on sauna, and it was my first time in Kaustinen Folk Music Festival. So then I met a lot of people that were connected with Sibelius Academy, and also with people that were in the music education here in Finland. So it was very interesting for me to realize that there was different programs that were more focused in global music more than in Western classical music.
Now you are studying at Sibelius Academy. How has the experience been in the global music program?
It has been very, very wonderful. For me, it's a perfect spot for learning from such amazing musicians and the teachers as well. And the facilities are mind-blowing. I can say that I never imagined how many things, rooms and instruments available for me to explore and develop my musicianship. It's very incredible. Also, I have to say that the human part of the global music department is very rich and is very, very much what it makes it special. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting how this program is helping you grow in more than one direction. You've been performing across so many musical styles: jazz, metal, Latin American folk. When you are composing, is there one that you are more drawn to?
That's a very hard question. I think that for me, thinking of a favorite style is very hard to choose, because all of them have been in different moments of my life, and they are related with so many different people that I really love that I can't put that in the balance. However, when it's about the composing, I feel like there is a connection that can happen with the music that is mostly in my safe zone, in my comfort zone, about playing, about how do I know them, how deeply I know this kind of styles. Sometimes I bring myself into styles or rhythms that are closer to Latin America. than something that I have learned from, I don't know, the Balkan or the Arabic or the Japanese traditions that, of course, they are not part of my music language as a mother tongue, but that I also feel like at some point I would like to bring them into my compositions because they are nice. I still feel like I have goosebumps when I hear this kind of music. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, let's move into the music. Could you introduce the piece you will be performing for us?
The piece that I'm gonna perform, it has not so much time that I compose it, so it's still in a developing mode. It's basically, let's say, like a popurrí, as we say in Spanish, of different groups that I like from the styles that I have been developing around. So, as a bass player, I mostly play with people, and sometimes it's very hard to be a soloist. But the most noticeable part of bass playing in many of the cultures that or the styles that I have been playing so far is the groove. So in this piece, I'm developing different groups that have been resonating with my musicality.
Great. Let's listen to it.
Yes.
That was wonderful. Such a clear reflection of whatever we've been talking. Thank you. Muchas gracias for sharing.
De nada.
Looking ahead, do you see your future in Finland, back in Chile, or somewhere else? And what are your hopes and goals for your life?
In terms of music, I see myself as somebody who's performing actively. Also, I want to develop a solo career. That is one of the most important challenges as a double bass player. And I think I want to give a little bit more in terms of music education. There is things that I have learned in Finland, also my experience there in Chile that I think I can merge in some way, that I would like to have a combination of different perspectives about education in music and also in my instrument. So I feel like there is something I can give about that.
Nice. Whatever comes next, I really wish the best for you.
Kiitos.
Before we end, we ask our guests to bring us a poem in their own language. Would you describe what do you want to share with us today?
This poem that I brought in English is called The Tearing of Time. In Spanish is El Desgarro del Tiempo. It's about the different timings that not only happens in music but in the daily life. That I have to say that I'm not the most accurate person in terms of time. Many times I'm very late, or I'm in another like time distribution. Like, it's always a challenge for me. So this poem develops a little bit of that sensation and how it affects to me and to the others.
Okay, sounds interesting. Let's listen to it.
El desgarro del tiempo. Mi reloj se ha dañado, está lento, desfasado. Su lesión no me hace gracia, es un compás anacruzado. Te prometo, y no es mentira, esa vuelta fue más corta, un desgarro temporal, una milésima tardía. Poesías sin ritmos, unas décimas de 6, un desgarro temporal, 5 vueltas sin saber. Ya no vivo con temor a lo lento y desfasado, pues me duele ese reloj, más rápido el pasado.
It was really beautiful. Muchas gracias for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Javier, for sharing your story, your music, and your roots with us.
Thank you so much, Mernush, for the invitation, and all the team of Genelec for such a beautiful work that they do.
Thank you. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into Uncovering Music IDs. We'll be back soon with more voices, more music, and more stories that connect us across borders. Don't forget to follow the podcast and share it with friends who love music from around the world.